What's going on? It's Johnny King with another episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. And what's so fun about doing, 300, 400 plus episodes is that I get to not only meet amazing people, but then actually become longtime friends with them. And I couldn't be more excited to have Marcum Davis back on the podcast because we connected during COVID. You invited me, which was such an honor to be one of the ambassadors of Hope, your summit that you put together, which is so incredible. You're so generous in everything that you do. Not only did you send me a copy of your new book, you gave me a mug. I have, I should just grab it right here. Check out this amazing, it's kind of hard to see because it's all blurred out, but he sent me this beautiful Ambassadors of Hope 2020 Summit, kind of crystal. Man, you're just so generous. And the things that you do, talk about legacy, which is what we're going to talk about. You're the epitome of legacy. So thank you for being here. And I'm so excited to kind of dig in and promote your book. This is amazing.
Bro, that's so awesome, man. What a great intro. To me, the greatest intro is just the bond we have, and nothing else is necessary. You know, two guys are just loving life and doing what we can for others. And again, I could pitch that back. You know, every time we connect, it's like, you know, we're the long lost brothers from another mother, you know, and it's you guys who are part of this podcast and watch, Johnny, you guys are really so fortunate and blessed. This is a very unique man who knows how to share his heart. He's building really a realm of kings. And I believe the best possible model for masculinity is the noble king, you know, who wants to just build his realm that benefits not only the people who live in his kingdom, but the other kingdoms he touches. So I commend you for the work you do and your incredible resilience, work ethic. I mean, you know, you're in the top half of 1% or less of people that even past 100 episodes. So, I mean, it's phenomenal. Well,
I appreciate it. I think it's one of those things that does tie into what we were talking about, because I think a lot of the guys that are listening, I believe, are similar in nature to myself and to you, where, man, I didn't have the best of masculine examples growing up. It's because of that mess that I've turned it into my message, as they say, right? It's because of the pain that I want to become the best version of myself, to quote unquote become the king of my own kingdom and have a legacy of positivity versus one of, you know, heartache. As I kind of, and no offense to my dad, he's been an amazing father, but just doing what he could with the tools that he had. And now we have so much more in this type of conversation, this technology that we have, the things that you're doing is a living example of what men could become. But I do feel like a lot of men are insecure. They don't, well, who am I? I'm nobody. I've got, you know, I'm not Marcum. I don't have those resources. I don't have the talent or the skills. And I think what's so cool about your book, and I want to get into that, and I don't know if we want to launch right into that, but I just think it's so cool that it really is written for every man. That's whether they're feeling like they're killing it or they feel like they're just keeping their head above water right now, right? So tell me a little bit more about where this kind of the genesis of this book came from and what you've been up to really since, because there's a lot that's been going on since 2020 and the war in Ukraine and everything else. So give the guys that are listening a little bit more of the what you've been up to, man.
Let's give a little teaser to what's coming in this episode, because, you know, guys, I lived in Ukraine for 8 years, and I have a nonprofit there, Abundance International, helping the orphans. I've also had for 12 years, I had a weekly broadcast for men in personal development, and that's originally what connected Johnny and I. We're fellows on this journey. The topic of legacy, creating legacy. And by the way, I know it's blurred on your end, but I'm really excited. We'll talk more about this book. It's brand new. It just literally hit the streets. Barnes and Noble, everywhere, online, whatever stores there are. I couldn't be more excited about it. And not just because it's my book. I literally gave a copy to my neighbor, who I just thanked him because he picks up my parcels, you know, when I'm gone and things like that. And we talked about it 3 or 4 times. And I had to say thank you, gave him a copy of the book, and I get an email from him. He goes, "Dude, I'm only on chapter 4. He goes, "You're firing me up." He goes, "I want more. I want to be elevated like this." I'm going like, wow, thank God, you know. But here's what I know. After 12 years of doing men's work, the deepest drive and the question, the ache of men's hearts is like, why am I here? What is my purpose?
Exactly.
And what is it going to take for me to feel alive? Because guys feel dead and they're going, what's the point of all this? It just feels purposeless. And so guys, in this time, I'm going to share with you some things that show that, flawed people, regular people create amazing legacies. I'm going to give you some great stories of my life, because I stayed in Ukraine 8 months after the war started, and I'll give you some war stories and just some crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, I reached out to you too. I wanted to be like, hey, you good? Are you okay? You still?
You did.
Like, man, there's lots going on and this is intense, but you're like, I'm still hunkering down, which I was like, wow, that's impressive.
Bro,
yeah.
I love you for that. You're one of the few people that did. It's probably a dozen people total has reached out to me in the middle of all that and just said, hey, you okay? And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Well, let me kick this off. If you don't mind, I'm going to share two stories.
Please.
And because to me, the big burden I find is one of the feedbacks I got early from people reading the book is they go, that sounds great, but I mean, come on, legacy isn't for me. That's for rich people, the elites, for inventors, and, this kind of thing. And so I was so desperate to break that and help guys understand your legacy is already in you. It is already in you. You're the one in the way of letting it out. And I'll prove that to you. And one of the simplest stories I can give is one time I was doing the drive from Vegas to Denver. And if you ever done that road, you get to the final mountain range where you've got Vail and Breckenridge, right? And it's a freaking all day drive, right? But I'm loving my life. I'm in my freaking, Camaro SS, which is my baby car. I love this thing so much. Red with black and red sport leather interior and, 550 horsepower. It was just a beast, but I'm already about 9.5 hours into the drive and I start feeling that wooziness. I've never experienced blackout before. And I'm passing Vail and I got about 15 more miles to go. And I go, okay, I'll make it. I'm going to make it. And sure enough, evidently I blacked out because I just remember waking up with the sound of gravel under my tires. I'm like, holy cow. And of course you snap awake and I'm off the side of the road. Fortunately, no other cars around me, but I hit this pole at like 60 miles an hour. One of those little ski poles, for measuring the depth of the snow. I mean, And of course it set off all the airbags. The pole hit the back. It just totaled the car. And the police gave me a very nasty, don't drive drowsy ticket. And I waited for this tow truck driver to come pick me up. 20 minutes later, this guy comes out looking like Grizzly Adams. He's got a flannel shirt, probably mid-50s, scruffy looking, and blue jeans. And he just comes out with his personality. He goes, oh, dude, that looks so painful. You had to have loved that car. I go, oh, yeah, man. So he goes, you okay? You okay? So let me get you taken care of. And he goes, just chill for a little bit. So he gets it on the flatbed and he says, hey, you got a hotel? You got something taken care of? I go, yeah, I told him the place in Breckenridge. He goes, look, bro, I'm going to do you a favor. We're not supposed to buy our insurance, let you in the cab, but there's no taxis going to come out here. You're in the middle of the So he goes, I'll show you where they drop off. You get an Uber anywhere. I go, hey, who is this guy? Who is this guy? He's a tow truck driver, right? Like, tell me your story. What is it that, is about you, how you got here? And he says, I got to tell you, I'm living the life of my dreams. And immediately I'm like, WTF? And so I'm listening. I'm really sharply listening now. And he goes, you understand? He goes, I spent 45 years of my life, drugs, alcohol, abusing myself, hurting the people who loved me. And he says, I was doing a short time in prison and they gave me the option of probation to drive this tow truck. And I just thought it was a second chance at life. And he says, I took it. And I said, I swore I would never hurt anybody again. And in fact, he goes, do you realize every day I get to be the hero in somebody's real life tragedy, their real life trauma. He goes, I can't believe it. And he says, I just want to give back. And he says, when I'm not doing this, I get to ski the best places in the world. He goes, I don't even think I believe this life.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there going, who am I to complain? Oh my gosh, what a perspective on the world, right? How can a tow truck driver feel like he's living the life of his dreams? And it just reminded me, so many of even the rich and famous people we know who built legacies, in the book, I mentioned like Steve Jobs or Winston Churchill or Ernest Hemingway, and every one of them, although they were the leaders, they impacted the world top in their game, they were also severely flawed. They had alcohol issues. And so we got to get over this thing about putting people with this title legacy somehow on a pedestal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I feel like so many men that are extremely driven, I notice, are driven from some sort of void, some sort of hole that they're looking to fill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for a lot of them, it goes awry because they cannot handle the wealth, the popularity, the power, and they use it for bad, right? There's few men that I actually look up to, yourself included, who I'm like, okay, there's someone who actually has done the inner work to know that. And Tony Robbins is one of those guys too, where if he talks about himself when he was younger, man, he was all about women, and he was insecure, and he just loved the power he had. But as he grew older, he got to the point where he's like, he doesn't have to do anything. He's a billionaire. He doesn't have to do anything, but he does it because it comes from his heart, right? Yeah. Versus this sense of ego or his desire to prove or be somebody, right?
Right.
And so I feel like that's such a different come from for legacy, that I think a lot of men who, maybe struggle with like, can I create a legacy? But I'm flawed. How can I change the world because I'm flawed? If they really start if they do the inner work that we often so much talk about when it comes to personal development, like to come from that place of true desire to want to give, which I think connects with some of the formula we'll talk about of yours later. It's like, that's where a legacy of love really tends to last, right?
Yeah.
And is one that's worth remembering.
Yeah.
So, speak to that if you would.
I will. In fact, I'll start with the famous quote from Jim Carrey. He says, I hope that everyone has a chance to become rich and famous, to have everything they ever wanted, so they'll finally realize that's not what it's about.
Yeah, amen.
And I had the same. So I'm telling on myself. I had, when I was in my mid-30s, I guess, up to then, I'd really only worked desk jobs. I was a sales guy. I'd never made more than $50,000 a year. And I had married a young attorney, and so in her second year of practice, she was starting on her own. We decided we wanted to have a child, and it didn't take long to succeed in that effort. But I quickly realized, one of our values was we wanted her to be able to stay home with this child for at least the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And I had this holy crap moment. It's like, I got to double my income in 8 months or we're screwed. Yep. We just bought a house. We got to cover the mortgage. So the stories are in the book about exactly what I did, but I scrambled and I came up with ideas. I went to venture capitalists and I tried all these different things. We're out of my league. Never done anything like that. Only work for other people.
Amazing.
And at the end of this, I didn't end up getting my business plan funded, but I impressed enough people with my ambition and all the work I'd put into this that I got job offers.
Cool.
And so I was offered a territory with a publicly held company, state of California. They front loaded me $100,000 and a generous commission structure. And I grew that because, I felt responsible for it and I wasn't lazy about it. I grew it to $5.5 million and I was making 10%. So all of a sudden I go from this little guy and then the mother of invention said, I have to, make sure we can have my wife stay home with the child, to luxury. And I'd never had it. My dad was a pastor, so his ambition wasn't money; it was service. And so I'd never had the taste of it, right? Yes. So all of a sudden, I'm this kid, and so what do? I buy the biggest home in this brand new development in Thomas Park, next to the 47-acre, community park. I bought, Jaguar, big one for the family car, convertible Mercedes myself. I started this global adventure travel. I did all this stuff, and it was cooler than shit. Yeah. And it's like, I was self-indulgent, and I fed on the ego of everybody going, "Wow, nice car." And life wasn't without struggle. That spouse passed away, a very sad story. I was a single dad for a while, and then I married, wonderful, caring woman a few years later from Ukraine, and I thought, okay, we're all good again. But all of that I had amassed during the 2000s, and actually from before the 2000s, I worked that business 12 years. And of course, when the 2008 crash hit, millions of us were just completely wiped out.
Estimated, yeah.
The publicly held company I repped was gone in 18 months.
Wow.
Their entire niche was erased. And so I found myself without income, and the economy flipped all the values on my properties. And it took me about 14 months to be done, and so I found myself in that place of having to lose everything to bankruptcy, and moving into a condo my parents had, because they weren't using it at the time it was available. And so I find myself starting all over, realizing that past 12 years, what did it mean?
Mm.
Right? What did it
Mm-hmm.
mean? I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
done anything. Nobody would say, "Oh, Mark, he did so much for me," back in those days,
Right. Right.
And it was a very hollow feeling because I'd anchored my identity into the stuff, into my success, into people's praise and accolades. And so, unfortunately, when we were moving to LA in this little Anaheim apartment, for the first time in my, in my marriage with my new Ukrainian wife, I had to put her to work, and she started waiting tables.
Mm.
While I'm trying to get work, I went on Paramount. I started writing business plans, but it paid like $500 each, and it wasn't that often. And along this time, a guy named Rick Butts contacted me, and he goes, "Hey, brother," he goes, "I saw I'd written a little bit about my experience being married to a Ukrainian woman and the cultural differences and what I learned about relationships with it." He goes, "Hey, dude, what I'd really love to do is create a documentary with you." And and at the time I was emotionally exhausted, but it just gave me a feeling of, okay, all right, let's do something positive. And he just had good energy. So let me tell you Rick's story leading up to this moment where the crossroads come together. Rick had been, full back 8 years prior, had just been an insurance rep, and he worked for a megalith company, and he was a single dad with a 14-year-old daughter, and he wasn't seeing her, and he comes home exhausted from work, and he just gives her the leftovers of whatever energy he has left, and he's so burnt out, and he's just like, "Get me out of this, I feel so trapped." And so in desperation, he started to at least write a book. He thought maybe this is something I could do. He didn't know. Maybe books sell. He doesn't know if there's not much money in the actual sale of the book.
Yeah.
But he started writing it. It took him a couple of years. He wrote this one called the Safari Adventure Chronicles. And it sold a few thousand copies, but the benefit was it got picked up by a university literature professor who saw something in it and contacted him and says, with an invitation letter from the college, and said, "Hey, we'd like to have you come speak to my students. They're going to read your book, and here's a check for $2,000. And he was like, "Excuse me?" It's like, "You're going to pay me to do this?" He started getting excited about it. The short end of the story is it not only went well, he got so excited about it, he mastered what it took to get referrals and try to get more college speaking gigs. So within a year, he could leave his job. He only did speaking for these universities, and he could stay home with his daughter.
Wow. Yeah.
And I talked to Rachel, his daughter, and she says, "I remember those days so well. My dad had the high school admissions on speed dial, and he'd say, 'She's not coming in today,' and we'd go skiing,
That's awesome.
And soon after that, he got burned out because he started making $300,000 a year, but he was speaking all the time, everywhere. And so again, he put his head, how can I solve this? And he decided then to do what we're familiar with in the info business. He says, let me teach other people how to create speaking careers. He created something called the Speaker Machine. And shortly after that, he was able to stay home, do training with people over Zoom calls, and he had such a beautiful life. And at that point, for some reason, he contacted me and says, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about helping you build your brand out of what you've learned, and because I can tell you've been doing teaching, and I'd been doing little men's work with church small groups and things."
Yeah.
And it was such a breath of fresh air after the collapse to do this that we started off doing a weekly webinar, and I was teaching what I knew about relationships, and just lessons in life. And trust me, I had learned them. I'd been in the middle of them, and it's very hard. And on my 50th birthday, was exactly when one of the live webinars was supposed to be. And I just came online to the guys because at this point we were still not financially resolved yet. But I'd been putting every week for a couple of years into this effort, and we'd start generating a little bit with it for some programs. But I told the guys, I go, "Look, it would encourage me as a birthday present if you could share with me if there's something that's come out of these broadcasts that's touched your life." And brother, for the next hour, these guys went on and on about, "Mark, you don't understand. Because of you, I had the courage to take that side hustle. I've really made it into a business. Mark," he says, "I've lost 100 pounds. Do you realize that? I got the discipline to do it." He goes, "Mark, my relationship with my wife was failing, and we're really starting to re-fall in love again." And one after another, I heard these stories. I was like blown away.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, dude.
Mm.
And I said, here I am not making any money, living in somebody else's condo. My wife is having to wait tables, but I didn't want this feeling to go. This was so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And after the webinar was done, they went on the website and they posted 88 more comments of all the different ways that these guys had said, Mark, you don't know what you're doing for us. Keep this going. And I was, what happened? I was, yeah, we're doing this all the time. We're not aware a lot of times of the impact, right?
Yeah.
And I had to ask for it, but thank God I asked for it, and I got to hear it. Changed my life. And here's the story. It comes back to Rick. So during this time, I'd also helped him meet his wife, and he had bought a ranch in Idaho. But he had called me up and he says, Mark, I got to tell you, I've developed some spurs on my spine, and I'm going to have to go in for radiation treatment. And he had survived cancer before, but this was something new. And all right, brother, I'm praying for you. He just says, Mark, God's got to give me another decade. I got at least 2 more books in me to write. Because he saw how much good writing one book did and what it did for him. And unfortunately, 2 days later, the day he was supposed to go in for the procedure, he had an infection flood his body. His body just could not combat it. And he died the day he's supposed to get the procedure.
Oh, geez.
And it just crushed me. This is a guy, I mean, there were times we were talking almost every day, and I loved him dearly. We traveled. And, but what got me and was really the genesis for this book was his memorial service. I only knew him for Rick. This was just me and Rick. I'd never understood that he had the speaker machine. I never understood he had all these other things, or he touched all these people. But during that call, it was, again, person after person says what Rick meant to them, the people relationships, the crazy experience stories they had. I knew that he left those assets for his family that would be okay now after he passed. And of course, the creations he made between the online courses and the book, and he was just such a kind and generous person. And these stories came out. And then, of course, his daughter wrapped it at the end with and we were all in tears. And it occurred to me, here's a guy who's just 8 years earlier was just working a cubicle in an insurance office. How did he do this? How did he do this, right? And then I thought about the tow truck driver. And then I thought about the memorial service of my previous spouse that passed. And I'm thinking about, if it's not about the elite, if it's not about the wealthy, the famous, if a regular people can do this, what's the formula? What's the formula? And you'll read more about it in the book, but the short story is I studied these services and I came up with a pattern. And in it, I discovered every one of these memorial services every person talked about one or more of these 5 areas. People. So obviously the relationships are there with his family or friends. They talked about the relationship with the person. The second is experiences, the stories, the crazy places, the things they did, or when they had to go together, whether it's something charitable or adventurous or crazy or whatever, it's experiences they shared. And then obviously in a legacy, we think about the assets. We think about, what did somebody leave? So that's sort of a given. And I knew what they were because I knew what he left. And then we talk about the creations. What did somebody create? Like, whether it's really so many broad categories, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book, whether it's music, a movie, whether it's architecture in a building, whether it's a painting, whether it's whatever it is, what did you create out of your soul that touched others? And the last one is expressions of kindness. Whether somebody had a philanthropic or they just were kind to somebody at the right moment that changed their lives.
Yeah.
And so as I went through this formula, people, experiences, assets, creations, expressions of kindness, it sort of dawned on me after the fact, the acronym spells peace. People, P.E.A.C.E. And I said, this has got to be a book, because now I know with certainty we can help anybody create an incredible living legacy, have peace, do something that's of satisfaction that will touch people. And if they just do little tiny things to build on each of those 5 categories daily, I was like, this is big. This is big.
What do you feel like, because I think that's even the very last E, kind of does talk about like being able to give it back, expressions of kindness is kind of like, okay, we're doing all these things, and then I'm really just there to give from your heart. Right. But I feel like, again, there's so many different misconceptions that people or particularly my audience, men, have about legacy, you know, but what do you feel like are the things that stop a lot of guys in traditionally thinking about, you know, creating a legacy, or their resistance to leaving a legacy? What are those biggest misconceptions, you know, without having that formula that we just heard about, which is so helpful? What are some of those things that guys struggle with, do you feel like?
I think you hit it on. One is belief that it even applies to them. And the second is awareness, that being aware of what they do can contribute to one. But I think of myself, like I hadn't thought of this before. Like when I was building my little Marquee pile of goodies and toys and ambition, and you know, we're ambition driven guys, and built into our DNA. First chapter of Jordan Peterson's book, you know, is we have this hierarchy. We check each other out. We see where we stack. We're constantly comparing. And as soon as we ratchet up, it gives us dopamine. I'm higher than this guy now. Oh, I'm higher than this guy. It feeds us, and we get addicted. We literally get addicted to success. We get addicted to the chase. We get it, and then it comes with women. We get addicted to the chase, and then we're not interested, right? So all of our focus is on things that can vanish, that there's always somebody more successful. What happens if you're playing by that rule book and then it doesn't work for you? What does it say for you? And now you destroyed, right? It's sort of like climbing the ladder of success and then realize it's leaning completely on the wrong wall, you know? And so what we're trying to do with this, what we are doing with this, is if guys will, hey, can I do something today to invest in people? Can I do something to plan ahead for a cool experience? What am I doing with my assets? You know, what am I creating? And what can I do kindness to somebody? It's just simply an awareness. Because see, the thing about a legacy is this: nobody can say my legacy is. You can say, I want my legacy to be, but you can't say, because a legacy truly, whether somebody's past or living, is what other people say about them. Hey, what, you know, if I'm talking over here with Brian Bajan and I go, hey, you know, Johnny, oh, I know Johnny. Yeah, totally. That dude is what a right? And so this guy's giving, he's dedicated, his heart is there. He pours himself into men. And he says, and every time I connect with them, I just have this feeling of brotherhood, you know? And so it's what other people say about you, not in your presence. So how do you influence that, right? How can I influence what somebody else is going to say about me? You know, and as men with our hierarchy of comparisons, will go behind my back. How can, you know, what are they talking about behind my back? But the truth is, shifting the goal from being able to be one up above somebody else to wanting to invest, so people will say, you know, that guy did something for me. He touched me. And even if it's somebody you personally won't touch, I think about like a Morgan Freeman. I never met the man. I don't know if I ever will. But, you know, Shawshank Redemption touched me, man. It gave me the right. You know what I'm saying? So the dude touched me, and I would be happy to have a conversation with somebody about Morgan Freeman's legacy, because there was an emotional benefit I got from the interaction. You know, like Maya Angelou said, it's not about what you say or what you do. It's about how somebody feels after having been with you. And so it's a shift in awareness. But the cool part is it compounds, does build a legacy for anybody. And you'll end up so much more satisfied, because you're not setting yourself vulnerable to economic crashes, to somebody beating you, to somebody one-upping you. It's just, and this is why I'm so glad to have this chance to talk to your guys. I want there to be a world of guys that are out to build their freaking legacy, man, because it's such a more powerful way to live. And I know you know that.
Yeah. Well, and I do feel like one of those things that obviously we've touched on with the war in Ukraine, with things going on, obviously, in the world, with politics, with currencies and crypto. There's so much upheaval, right? COVID and still so many things that are still, you know, the PTSD we have maybe collectively from even that experience. There is a lack of peace. There's a lack of safety. And I do feel like in regards to my work, most specifically within myself, most recently has been, how do I find that sense of safety when the world seems so chaotic? And so much of what's been coming up for me is like, I just want peace, which is so ironic, right? I just want peace. I just want, you know, just to be able to just feel like my nervous system is grounded and settled, which I think is so important for the masculine, for the healthy, grounded masculine. feel that. And so I feel like your formula fits in so perfectly with that, not only as an acronym, but also just as a quality that energetically men experience when they're around men who are leaving a legacy, right? So it should coalesce in the sense of like, okay, if you want to feel peace, you need to actually express it,
do the things that are going to make it happen.
Yeah, which is ties right into your formula, right? So I think that's a beautiful thing in terms of just realizing that a lot of guys need to shift their beliefs, and that's where we can have this intellectual conversation, but you and I both know it takes so much more of a practice, so much more deep inner work to bring about the embodiment of being able to radiate genuine peace. And that comes from a place of like no longer doing it just because you want to have the nice car, because you want to have the nicest thing. You're always in competition. That's coming from a place of insecurity, right? It really has to be coming from a place of genuine desire to want to help people, right?
Yeah.
Have those personal connections. And do you have any other experiences or stories or anecdotes of how you've put this into play yourself, or how you've seen it maybe in other people that has maybe even just some of the experiences having been, boots on the ground in Ukraine when the Russians invaded, where you really started just seeing maybe not even huge acts, but little tiny moments that those little things, especially as children, we remember those things. There's like, it may have been just a passing moment by mom or dad or by a teacher or someone, but it impacts, us as children, or all the experiences that you've had with orphans. Like, have you seen any of that particularly has just touched you in terms of leaving that touch of peace or legacy?
Wow, that is really a great question, because it brings it to like, all right, where's the rubber meet the road on this stuff?
Yes.
And here's why I want you guys to really take this seriously and be on a mission to start your own legacy journey, because it changes your inner awareness, your inner character, changes you into a different kind of person. And as men, one of the greatest character aspects we could develop into is that of the sage. There's a deep wisdom in the heart of men, and we ask ourselves what's really important, right? But these characters are what's important. And I don't think there's a man out there who wouldn't say that, people having experiences, your assets, what you create in the world and expression of kindness, touching on those even in small ways compounds. But what it does, it changes who you are. So for example, when I was living in Ukraine and people knew the war was coming, people were trying to tell me ahead of time, Mark, get out of there. I'm a U.S. citizen. I can go anytime I want, get out of there. It's coming. You don't need to be there. I am there with staff and employees. I'm there with, extended family. And I finally had to speak to them and almost put them back in their place to say, look, I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why I'm staying. It's like, 1, I don't want to be at home sitting there watching on the big screen TV when this happens, knowing the people I love are suffering without me, and I left them. Second, I want to be able to look back in a year from now and say, I'm really proud of what I did. I'm proud of myself. So I can set aside the anxiety of today to say that I really want this to be something that's going to last.
Yes.
The third thing is, I really believe that if I was there, that there's a reason for it. That I was there for a time as this. There was something I was supposed to do. And so in light of that, I was just, no, I'm going to stay. We'll see what happens. And sure enough, on February 24th, 2022, 5:30 in the morning, woken up to like an earthquake. I grew up in California. No earthquakes are. It's what it felt like, but you heard these massive explosions. And even from my apartment window, you could look out and see the smoke rising as the Russians had blown up the airport in Mykolaiv, where I was living, just about a couple hours south of Odessa. Really, we were 45 minutes from the front lines. And my first reaction was, okay, let's go see what I can do. And I had no idea. I just got dressed. I headed for the streets and immediately stunned, but then trying to go, what do we do? And nobody had any idea when things get restocked. So of course, they're trying to go to the grocery stores with hours along the lines. They go to the gas stations to fill up. They go to the ATMs and take out whatever cash they can. So you saw this fear. And immediately I called up some of my staff and I go, we got to go check with the orphanages. We were supporting 2 in just our local town and 1 in another town nearby. And so we got there and they were freaked out because they go, we have 56 kids under 4 years old, little tinies, and we had 5 days worth of food and we were expecting restocking coming from the Kherson region. Well, the Kherson region just got captured by the Russians. Help was not coming. Food was not coming.
Yeah.
So we go, give me the list. And so we loaded up, the big SUVs, and we were like, okay, let's go see what we can do to go get these guys' needs. And of course we get there and the lines are out the roof. And so we just go up to find the store manager and go, look, we got to take care of the orphan kids, and they go, look, dude, fill your cards up. When you get to the front, just let me know and I will put you in front of the line and we will get you out. We went to go to get medical supplies because a lot of these are special needs kids, right? So to the pharmacies were getting ransacked. So we went to the hospital to go say, hey, can you get us some? And while we were at the hospital, we see these military vehicles there. So they're a little nervous, I mean, they're Ukrainians, are on our side, but it's like, you never know what mood they're in.
Yeah.
And when one of the guys came up and asked one of my staff, he goes, who are you people? What are you doing here? And she said, we're the orphanage. We got to get some supplies for them. And he goes, just a minute. They came back and gave us 200 pounds of potatoes out of their own food rations.
Mm.
And we saw acts of kindness like this all over the place. And I got to say, the me from the 2000s, would have been a different human being. I probably would have gotten my ass back out of the country and back home to safety, right? And just said, hey, I can telephone it in. Hey, how you guys doing? Let me get you,
Yeah.
And I became a different person because of it. And this is what I find from people is in their heart leaps up to say, I told you before we started, I gave a copy to my neighbor. I'd only talked to 3 or 4 times. He gets my packages when I'm gone, from the front door.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I want to thank you for doing that for me. Here's a copy of my book. I get an email from him. He goes, Mark, I'm only on chapter 4, but he goes, I'm so lit up. He goes, I want this. I want to lift my life up to a different level. I go, help me out. What can you do for me? And this is exactly what will happen in you and everyone else, because what I'm speaking is truth. It's in your heart. I don't have to tell anything. There's nothing I can tell you that'll connect with you except what's already in you. And there's a truth in you that says, I want to be that man. I want to be the sage. I want to be the one that lives, from service. And plus it's the juice of life. When you get to having crazy ass experiences with people, there's nothing like that, man. Go adventure stuff, do stuff, crazy camping trips where the bear eats the food and, the downpour comes and you talk about it for years. That's the investment in yourself and into people. And the richness of relationships, building stable assets, what that does for you, what it does to create something from your soul. We're all birthed from our creator. And you could even study the dopamine and effects that comes in your body when you just help somebody out, just even in the smallest way. It's an amazing life, but nobody's put it together quite like this. And I thank God, I'm not going to take credit for it. It came from all these events. But it's like, I realize this is, I think, is the crying heart of the man's life. It's like, I want to be alive. I want to know what I'm doing means something. I want to feel the energy of all of this between the wild creations, the expressions out of my heart, building deep connection where people go, man, I'm so glad I know that, brother. This is the stuff. And in fact, there's a freebie in there. If people go to my website at marcumdavis.com and you just get on my list, I've got a free template to a daily planner. We're going to be producing a book, but you can get the template for free and on there every day. Just a little job. What did you do today to these 5 categories, plus your micro visualizations, gratitude practice, and then planning your day. So I want to give that for free because I think you don't realize that you go, so what am I going to do today? So I'm going to send an email to my mom. Okay, but what am I doing? It adds up and it shifts your thinking, shifts your mindset.
Yep. You know what kind of was just dawning on me, and this, I think when it comes to your peace formula, it should be things that you're all doing, that you're focusing on kind of simultaneously, right? You should be kind of tapping into all that. But I was thinking you could almost run it backwards, where you're just do you say experiences? I'm going off the top of my head, but experiences, kindness from your heart, right?
Yeah.
Not experiences. What's the last E?
Expressions of kindness.
Expressions of kindness. Thank you. And then ultimately, if you do that, and you find out what people's needs are. You can create, solutions from that, which creates assets, right? And then you end up being able to have, with more assets, you're able to create more experiences, right? And you're able to connect deeper with people. So you can kind of run it simultaneously. You can kind of run it backwards. It just kind of dawned on me that, like, okay, if you really start to come from a place of just your heart first and foremost, because I think that was a place where I was after my divorce. I think when you go through, as you get older, there's just no way you can't experience loss, right? And God bless those little orphans. They've their whole experience at the beginning is all focused on around loss. But I think that's what you're saying. Like, if you were you from the 2000s might have jetted back to the United States, but you, as who you are now, you've experienced loss. You've lost your wife. You've lost various probably other people and your assets and everything else. You kind of know what the real meaning to this experience is, this human experience. And that, to me, is where I also, like, when I had lost everything, that thought came from God to just give, and so I started reading scripture at the jail, at the prison. But even that felt good for a moment, but I'd be 10 minutes having driven home from the prison and I'd already feel empty again. And it's just like, what? And that led itself to opening up my first gym, right? But I think it's just asking the questions of, like, how can I give, right? Which made me think of the last E, right? Of your piece. And then just you're creating from there, right? And your assets will come. But a lot of times we start with, oh, how can I create assets? How can I create the car, the house, it's like, no, man, just come from your heart, right? You come from your heart, from a true desire to want to give and help people. And it's amazing what type of legacy will evolve out of that, right?
Yeah.
So it's so cool that you were able to be able to stay around, to lead, to offer that when shit hit the fan and bombs started hitting the ground. That seems just, I can't even imagine. I've not experienced that, right? That's intense.
Yeah, it was intense.
I can imagine.
I love your insight. It's so fun to me. I have these conversations now, and it adds new perspective all the time. You're right. It's a cyclical thing. All of these feed and build each other. So all 5 aspects just grow, and they help each other
continuously.
To grow. It's beautiful. I'm thinking about that same thing you said about when you went to help somebody, but then you felt empty afterwards. But I think if you're every day touching, what am I touching on these 5? If you're just something, all of them, you're not going to feel empty in that, because what's the next thing? And the next one, all of them feeding this loop back to give you a sense of fulfillment. And to the business point, I love this, because you think of the story of Jack, the tow truck driver, and you think about, even if you had multi-billion-dollar corporations, if they took what they're existingly doing and shifted it to this belief that what we're doing is here to help people in their time of need, and we're passionate about that. It's kind of what Apple set them apart, right? Apple came along and said, we're here because we believe people with passion can change the world. That's the Steve Jobs quote. So let's get back to that, where companies go, we're here to do something because people want, whatever it is, and to help them achieve what they want in this world. And then the profits follow, much bigger than just always watching the bottom line. The irony is that, that paradox.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that too, which makes so much sense. I've never forgotten it's a purpose-driven business or legacy versus a profit-driven business or legacy.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's the difference between, being an absent father to your kids or to your wife, to your spouse, then because you're focusing on profits, your own profit, versus just focusing on truly, like, what is your purpose here as a man? As your role as dad, as husband, as businessman, as part of the community, right? So it's a deeper level of existence, I think, and I think that's what attracts people to listening to this podcast, is they want to become kings. It has nothing to do with, like, me ruling over other people. It's me ruling over my own experience, me ruling over my own limiting beliefs, my own shortcomings. It's me creating abundance in all areas, all facets of my life, which I think is the beautiful thing. It ties into so much of what you're saying, because that's the legacy, right?
Well, listen, I love the king, because it's the highest. I think the noble king is the highest symbol of the masculine. And in the noble king, what he wants to do and be most proud of is that the people who are in his kingdom are happy that they're in his kingdom.
Yeah.
They're happy to say, I'm so happy this guy's my king, and the king, he's not bored. I mean, this guy, he's got so many adventures and big ambitions and things he wants to do. And then he's got to build a kind of kingdom that he can bridge and negotiate with other kingdoms. Yeah. So there's so much in that symbolism. And one of the other things I teach men, and I'll throw this in here on the subject of kings, is I think one of the things I used to coach guys, dating always comes up with guys too. And I said, a lot of guys get intimidated by a beautiful woman. And my comment is because you've made her the only beauty in your life. I said, for instance, a king has got beautiful architecture. He's got beautiful tapestries and art on the walls. He's got music playing. He's got this beautiful garden he goes out and spends time with. And then it's just natural to have beauty around him. And the woman's just one more thing. And so I always tell guys, it's like beauty is a necessary ingredient to the man's soul. But if you only make it the woman, it's going to be like this dry sponge going, it's a pretty girl, And so I say, be the noble king, where you just make, have your car clean, have art on your walls in your place where you live, have your cubicle where you work, like set up, wear clothes that make you feel good, right? And all of that adds up to, and spend time in nature, listen to good music all the time. And all of that adds up to this incredible power. As ironic as we never talk about this, beauty, if you surround yourself with it in these subtle ways, is a power for the masculine soul. And I think that's part of it.
Well, that's a huge part of it. That's why I moved to Colorado and to Denver here,
Good for you, brother.
Yeah, I'm in the same way. That's my Vail and Breckenridge and all that stuff is my backyard, which is amazing.
Man.
So it's so much to be learned from grounding yourself in nature,
Let me delve one thing. You touched on it, and I watched a couple of your recent guests you've had.
Yeah.
And they talk about the spiritual dimension of things. And I bring this up, I've had recently, in connection with the memorial service things I've done, I have this fascination with watching near-death experience stories, recanting. And there's a common thread in all of them. All of them realize that, this world and the thinking body is decaying and temporary. We have an eternal spirit, right? Actually, chapter 14 of the book is called The Eternal You. And they have a temporary encounter with something that and they're so similar. It can't be just somebody's imagination, right? In people's imaginations, one person would have purple elephants and the other ones have Mario Brothers. I don't know, but it's like, it's not, and they experience deep love and a sense of home. It's like, this is where I belong, and they are themselves. They have their memories, they remember, but they can see they're separated from their bodies. And in this, they're welcomed. In this, by the end of it, they come back with a deep sense of like, you know what, I'm good. I'm eternally good. You know what? And it allows me to want to treat this like my playground.
Yeah.
A little fun here, and for those, come back with a belief in the source, the greater, he made this for me to enjoy. So I want to enjoy it with him. I'm supposed to enjoy and take in everything I can here. It was made for me to enjoy.
Yeah.
The thing is, I know that I'm loved and I know that I have a home. And the third is, all of them come back with this sense of like, and I feel like my purpose is to either express kindness to my fellow spirits or help them understand that they're loved too. Right?
It's so, I feel like for so many years, like what should I be doing with my life? It's all about doing. What's my purpose? What should I be? And it's like, man, I had different experiences. It was like, it literally just comes down to my purpose is just to love myself and love other people. There's nothing, is there anything greater than that? Everyone who's left a legacy, Jesus or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, it was all based on love, right?
Yes.
Foundation
it is all
love.
Based on love. That is the greatest. In fact, I have a phrase that I've been churning for about 2.5 years, and I'm really, I don't know how long it's going to take me to formulate this thought completely, but this phrase came to me, the wisdom of love. And in the concept of the wisdom of love is, why is love the highest source, both of our soul's ambition? Why is it the dominant experience people have when they touch the other side? Why is love the thing that motivates, people? Like if you read Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, it was the guy's love to get back to his girl that got him through hell. right?
Yeah. Yep.
Guys, and in fact, you think about those guys during World War II, the pilot had a picture of his girl on there, these, or the things that guys would do. All the guys in the would say, it's not about us, it's about the guy next to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything, the highest noble, what is this that's so I'm going to keep meditating on this and searching deep. But if this was designed into both world experiences, there's a deep wisdom to it. Why is it so? Why is it the highest form of existence for us to get to that place of love? And what keeps us from it? And how can we get out of the way? Because I believe the legacy that we're supposed to live here in this world, half of the things in that formula, especially experiences and creations, are play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's play,
Yeah.
right? Why do all of these wise people say, be like a child, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we take things too seriously. Imagine your creator, he loves you so much, he made this entire world as a playground he wants to share with you.
Yeah. It makes me, I mean, yeah, it totally makes me think that, like, I feel like the biggest kind of facade that this whole human three-dimensional world, tries to play on us is that belief that we're separate from our source.
Mm.
And I think why love is so much an interwoven, just a thing that we all that's all we want for ourselves and from each other, is because we're all coming from the same source. And so we're all attracted back to oneness, right?
Yeah.
And when we die from this human experience, all those, what do you call it? Near-death experiences come like, oh, I'm just enveloped in love.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels amazing. That's all we kind of experience, right? And I feel like we come out of the womb, and then it's the fear of like, oh gosh, I'm no longer a part of the collective, and now I'm separate. And then we all kind of work our way back to, oneness again. But I do feel like when we're giving experiences of kindness and being able to just express without any desire to get back, it just makes us feel so good, whether we get noticed, whether we get, like, again, like for dating guys who just go and talk to a pretty woman, usually they feel amazing, just because even if they get rejected, like, I just connected. I just wanted to, give her a compliment, or just to acknowledge, and then to just love themselves, that they got out of their own fear and they stepped through that. I just feel like so much of this experience is obviously connecting back to oneness, and it's just through love. So I do feel like it's all a spiritual, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
That is the main emphasis. And when you understand that, and you can look in a room of people and imagine them as your spirit connecting with all of them in this warmth, and you feel the energy together, some people talk about the vibrations of the frequencies, but truly it's about us putting out that energy, and us putting out there saying, I want people to feel my warmth, and they will. I want to be connected with these people, and you will. It's that intention of saying, I want this experience. I want to get whatever wounding and pain and lack of forgiveness and bitterness, all these things, I want them removed so I can experience the world that's been given to me, and have a childlike spirit of play. Guys, we're so heavy. We are so heavy. We just live so weighed down. And every day you wake up on this earth, I'm telling you what, I've had it all. I've had the bankruptcy. I've had the loss. I've had loss of a spouse. I've had betrayals. I've had things stolen from me. I've had fear. I've had all these things in my life. But I'm telling you what, Steve Jobs would love just to have one more day on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can understand, even in the middle of your pain, it's a season.
Mm-hmm.
It'll cycle. It won't stay forever. You've survived all the previous seasons, and there will come spring. There will come summer. And live by that, by faith. It's like the economic ups and downs. We're freaked, oh, this is going, then all of a sudden it comes back up. It's like, what if we could be in the season of pain and heartache and be at peace with it? Because we go, you know what? It's my life experience. I value myself. I don't have to hide from this. I don't have to enjoy it, but I know it's going to pass.
Yes.
And in that peace of understanding, you're good for the long run, the eternal story. And in this time, seek out the energy you can to the people who can offer that nourishing. All spirits, we can help each other out. And that's sort of the last chapter in the book. Is like, as we're trying to create a legacy, our legacy isn't going to be about touching people, because that's the people who create our legacy. They're the ones who talk about us or benefit from what we did on this earth. And so the greatest thing we can do, if we understand who we are, is to then enjoy that and enjoy them and enjoy everything, and be free of fear, right? The opposite of love is fear. Be free of fear, so we can dive in and have some crazy ass adventures.
Yeah. Well, again, if I hadn't have met you, didn't know your story and everything that you had been going through or have been through in terms of loss and heartache and betrayal and having things taken from you, like, I would never know it, you know? And I think that's the fruits of the labor of doing the work, to where my experience of you, I'm sure everyone else's experience of you, is just that you do come from, you're just love. You come from a place of love, your energy, the reasons why you continue to do the beautiful things that you do. And like I started off this whole podcast saying how generous you are with just the, you know, meeting me, and you led with generosity, you know, is just, that's coming from all the deep work, because you went through probably some of the shittiest of times, and you either chose, I'm going to either kill myself or I'm going to learn from this. I might as well just keep learning from it. Right. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. Cause I know there's men that are listening to this who are probably going through some really tough times. They have to realize it's actually the greatest gift that you can get versus an easy life. Right. So man, thank you. I know we could probably keep talking, and this is the second time I have you on, and this won't be the last.
Thanks, brother.
Tell the guys more about. You said obviously Barnes & Noble, anywhere online, anywhere specific they can connect with you, even online, in terms of coaching or support, or you know, where can they find all of your good stuff?
Well, it's this. I'm going to do something completely contrary to what what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not going to send you first to my website. I mean, I'll mention it in a second. I really want you to understand that right now, since the book is new, for everybody who buys a book, and it's everywhere, whatever you like, online places, Amazon, it's on, you know, Walmart.com, Target.com, it's on, you know, obviously Barnes & Noble. Please ask for it at the counter, go find it, get copies. It's election season, so they're not putting me in the airports yet, but start asking for it, because it's going to come to the airports.
Nice.
I want, every time you buy a book, it tells the booksellers people want this. And what it'll do is it'll multiply the availability. And then because you bought a book, somebody else will see it on the shelf, and you just touch somebody else's life. It's a great way to pay it forward. If you buy 3 copies, you know, just email me the receipt, and I'm going to give you one of these amazing coffee mugs.
I love it.
The official Legacy coffee mug, and just a personal connection with you. I really, everything I do in this book is about connection. There are so many places I say, please connect with me, write me, tell me how you're doing. It's just, the website's just my name, marcumdavis.com. If you get on my email list, I want to give you some bonuses, just because I want you to get started right away.
Yeah.
And so first of all, there's, like I said, the template, the daily planner template for free. Download that, start using it. In it, I'm also going to give you a 20-minute video where I talk about creating the morning rituals for legacy makers. And just by the fact that I know this touches your heart, you are a legacy maker. So get over that. If you ever thought you weren't, you are. Your legacy is in here. It's about us getting out of the way, going, okay, then what am I to do? And the answers will come. The third thing is I created this beautiful video series. I did it in studio, called 7 Days to Making Your Mark on the World. And it goes over these core concepts. And so, you know, every day we'll drip you a new one. So I want to just give that to you for free. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Right now, I don't have anything to sell. I'm going to be building courses. I'm going to do a mastermind. We're going to be doing, I'll bring in a lot of experts for each one. I'll bring in relationship experts, asset experts. I'll probably connect with you, Johnny, to do crazy experiences. Let's do some adventure stuff, right?
Yeah.
I do have an expert I love dearly with all my heart, Dale Mathis, who is a commercial artist who makes a living from his sculptures, his crafts, his gallery work. And he teaches on how to make creations into a business. So if you just simply go to marcumdavis.com and just get on the list, you get the freebies, but we'll let you know when we do other stuff. I'm
Yeah.
developing a daily planner. All these things are coming out, but this is brand new. And now the most important thing I would just ask you to do isn't even got to do my website is please get a book. Please
Yeah.
get a copy, because that'll tell the retailers that there's a need for it, and it'll continue to sell more. And then, please bless me by letting me give to you all the free things I have for now. I got nothing to sell you.
Well, and like you suggested, I think it'd be even more amazing if they bought 3 books and paid 2 of them forward,
Give them out.
Yeah, give them out, and
Buy a box. If you have a company too, I can do my publisher. These people are really from the heart. I can do a custom run for a company. So if you'd like to have your name, part of your logo on the front of the book, your version, your legacy story, and we do part of the chapter telling your story, let me know and we can do a special run just for your employees.
Cool. I love that. Dude, Marcum, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's nice to obviously connect with you. As always, it's nice to be able to connect with you on very similar time zones compared to last time when we connected. I think it was 1 a.m. When I was
Ukraine.
Like, oh my God, this guy is amazing because he's bringing this energy at 1 or 2 a.m. your time in Ukraine. So, dude, just good to connect to you. Thank you so much for blessing the guys with all the good stuff from Legacy, Live with Purpose, Find Fulfillment, Be Remembered, and the whole P.E.A.C.E formula is beautiful. So just keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for being here. I'm happy to help you in any way I can to support the mission you're on. You're doing some great stuff. Yeah. Thank you so much.
The feelings likewise, brother.
Yeah.
Strength and honor.
Strength and honor. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for listening. As always, connect with Marcum. Go grab his new book, Legacy. It's out now anywhere you can find books, hard copies or online. And we'll look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. I'm Johnny King. We'll talk soon. Cheers.